Are you good with that, Sarah?
Sure, I'll keep manning the waiting room, and folks are muted as they come in, so it shouldn't be too disruptive, I think.
Okay, very good. And everyone's muted otherwise?
Yes.
Unless they're going to speak? Okay, great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us here at this virtual lunch meeting. We wish we could serve you some good food, but instead we're going to serve you some very important information and hopefully have a productive, efficient presentation this lunchtime. And I want to begin by introducing myself. I'm Lovett with the law firm of Bernstein Shore, and I'm honored to serve as the chairman of the Campaign for Legal Services this year. As you know, the Campaign for Legal Services raises funds to support legal services in New Hampshire. And we have really a very good leadership group that's been working to try to navigate through these very interesting and challenging times. And I believe this is our third virtual presentation that we've had. And I'm pleased to announce that we actually have a maximum capacity here. We have over 99 registrants who are going to be joining us if they're not already on. So we want to thank you for participating at lunchtime of your day. And in a particular way, we want to thank the organizers of this event were originally Dartmouth Hitchcock and Drummond Woodson, who had agreed to organize an Upper Valley reception. We try to take a show on the road and in ordinary times and have a up close and personal meet and greet and opportunity to talk to people about what the work is that we support. And so we've transitioned into this sort of Upper Valley online presentation. And we want to thank our sponsors, again, Dartmouth Hitchcock and Woodson Drummond for their work in organizing this event before COVID hit, and now continuing to commit to Campaign for Legal Services afterwards. I think it's important just before we begin with our presentations to just take a moment to acknowledge that we are heading into what we believe to be a real surge for the need for legal services. The Supreme Court had issued orders essentially suspending evictions and foreclosures. People who were homebound were not reporting instances of domestic violence, child abuse, and so forth, and that's starting to surface now. And so I'm going to start as we're going to end, and that is to ask you to open your hearts, your minds, and your wallets, if you can, to support the Campaign for Legal Services as we try to address the needs of our citizens and our communities, particularly those who are underprivileged, to be able to access the legal services they need to protect themselves and their families. And that's what we're all about. You know, we're from all parts of the state, all parts of the political spectrum, and we're committed and unified with one voice to try to help those in need and in need of legal services. So with that, I'm particularly honored. By the way, I understand that the Mayor of Claremont, Charlene Lovett, who I've met previously, and she does a great job in Claremont, is with us, as well as staff representatives from Congressman Annie Custer's office and Senators Shaheen and Hassan. Maggie Hassan was with us in our last virtual meeting to kick us off. And today we're really honored to have a past chairman of the Campaign for Legal Services who's really set the standard, a really high standard for the performance of our organization and our efforts. And he's taking time from his busy schedule to join us, and that is Attorney General Gordon MacDonald. Gordon, we're so very proud of the work you do and continue to do in your job, and we're grateful for all you've done previously to help us be where we are. So I'm going to mute my microphone and give you a chance. The floor is yours, and we welcome you to this virtual luncheon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ovid. Sarah, can you hear me? Great. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm seeing some familiar names and faces. It's nice to see old friends, and particularly those in the Upper Valley. Grew up in Hanover, and to Dartmouth Hitchcock when I was leading the campaign, and since you've always been a steadfast supporter. So everyone in that community, thank you. For the others, thank you for being here and learning more about this really, really important cause. For the non-lawyers in our audience, the best way I can think to explain of the importance of this is with a bit of an admission or a confession, if you will. I've been a lawyer practicing law since 1995, was in private practice, and now obviously is a public lawyer. And the admission is that that when I walk into a courtroom to this day, I have butterflies in my stomach. It can be an intimidating and awesome place, but all the more so for those who do not have legal training, for whom it is a completely foreign place. And just imagine walking into a courtroom, if you're a young mom, seeking the protection for yourself and your child against a violent abuser. If you're hardworking parents, both with 2 jobs, barely making ends meet, or seeking to stave off a foreclosure or an eviction. Or if you're a veteran who's earned your benefits, but you are risking the loss of them and the vital lifeline to both income and health benefits, how that would feel. Everyone who's watched Law and Order or any cop show knows that it is a vital and inherently important part of our Constitution that those who are criminally accused have legal representation. But in the civil world, there is no such analog. There is no such requirement, even though the rights at issue are so important. The safety and security of young families, keeping a roof over your head, keeping access to healthcare and vital benefits. And so that is truly the essence of this cause. And as Ovid mentioned, it's something I was involved with as a private lawyer, both as a pro bono attorney for the Bar Association's domestic violence program and as a leader of this campaign. And I can tell you that of all the causes and undertakings I've been privileged to have and be exposed to as a lawyer, none has been more satisfying than this. Both representing clients as a pro bono attorney, particularly in the domestic violence sphere, and working on behalf of the fine organizations that the Campaign for Legal Services supports. And you're about to see that there are some of New Hampshire's most exceptional lawyers who work for New Hampshire Legal Assistance and also the Legal Assistance, and Referral Center. And I hope you hear and have an open mind and heart, as Ovid said, about the very, very, very important work they serve and the clients and institutions that they serve. And I hope you will find it also in your heart and in your spirit to support us in whatever way you can, support this cause in whatever way you can, because it is so critical to our citizens. And I want to echo what Ovid said. In my current role, one of the things that is really concerning to me about COVID is our potential victims of domestic violence that we do not know, potential victims of child abuse that we do not know, all underscoring the importance of this very, very important cause. So with that, Sarah, I'll turn it over and thank everyone again for being with us.
Thank you so much for that, Gordon. Heartfelt testimony you've given us, and it makes me very grateful that we are recording this presentation. We're going to be uploading it to YouTube and making a link accessible from our website. So your presentation will be seen by many others as well. And we really appreciate your taking the time. You stay with us as long as you like, and we certainly understand if you need to exit the meeting as we go forward. So again, thank you, and keep up your good work, Gordon. Okay. I'm pleased now to turn the floor over to someone who's really been a wonderful leader for so many years and addressing homelessness and issues of housing challenges facing our citizens. Elliot Berry is really a legend here among us in New Hampshire, and I'm grateful that he's with us today. And I thought, Elliot, maybe you could talk to us about what you're seeing on the homelessness front and the housing needs of our citizens. I think you've got to unmute yourself, Elliot.
Sorry about that. Is that better? Now I can't. Okay. So first of all, thank you for that kind introduction. I think legend is a better word than old person, so I appreciate that. Let me start out by giving a little background that before this incredible crisis hit, there were approximately 30,000 New Hampshire tenant households in which tenants were paying over half of their income for rent. Think about that. When you pay more than half of your income for rent, that means one unexpected expense. Your car breaks down, a big medical bill, and all of a sudden you're behind in rent with no possibility, no reasonable likelihood of getting caught up. At the same time, you had a statewide median rent for a 2-bedroom apartment that was about $1,350 a month. So all-time highs in cost and ability to pay extremely limited. And then comes this catastrophe where so many people have lost most of their income, if not all. And so what we're looking at right now is a situation, I feel a number of people nationwide have talked about a tsunami of evictions. What I feel like right now is as if we were in Miami, looking at a Class 5 hurricane that is coming, and we're starting to feel the headwinds right now. Already courts have been scheduling a lot of eviction hearings for cases that were filed before the moratorium. And so they're coming in already. We see a number of landlords who have filed non-payment evictions prematurely, being unaware of or ignoring sometimes the governor's most recent executive order. And so already we're taking in clients who are looking at that. And then on July 25th, the federal eviction moratorium will end. That's a very sweeping moratorium that covers all federally assisted housing and multifamily rentals in buildings that have federally backed mortgages of any kind. So when that expires, landlords who evict for non-payment will have to give a 30-day notice. And what that means for all of you who might want to get involved in one way or another in helping is that right around Labor Day, those cases are going to start ending up in court. And that's where I think the demand will be extraordinary. I can tell you right now that the community action programs that are administering the governor's housing relief fund are absolutely overwhelmed with requests for financial assistance to pay back rent. I think as of now, I think they're looking at about 3,000 applications over the last 2 weeks. So the amount of need is incredible. I don't think I have to tell anybody out there that no matter what the problems that families face today, and they're many and varied, but if you don't have a home to stay in, a roof over your head, then it is very hard to deal with any of those issues, whether it's just across the board, whether it's substance abuse issues, family violence, whatever. You just can't begin to address them if all of your energy is trying to find some place to shelter. Again, I thank you for the opportunity, and Ovid, thank you for your work, and Gordon, on our behalf.
I think it was muted and I just unmuted it, so it should work. Okay.
Hello.
So
anyway, thank you, and if I can answer anybody's questions, I'd be happy to.
I'm going to mute myself. Thank you, Barry, for that. Elliot, for that. We are going to take some questions at the end of the presentations. There'll be a couple more. And I believe we're pretty well muted now. So if you're taking yourself off of mute, could you put yourself back on if you're not speaking? And we'll be good. So thank you, Elliot, for that, again, overview. Next, we'd like to hear from Brecky Hayes Snow, who's been with Lark since 1996, and she served as the executive director since 2018. The Lawyer Assistance Referral Center is a very important part of our delivery system. And so, Brecky, can you tell us about what you're seeing from the Lark perspective?
I'd be happy to. And first, I just want to thank everybody for taking time out of their day, to Attorney General McDonald and Ovid for participating. The support that we get from the greater legal community is really invaluable. So I'm going to quickly give a brief overview of Lark, because I'm not sure everybody is that familiar with us. Legal Advice and Referral Center is sort of the front lines of legal services in New Hampshire. We operate primarily a hotline where people who are seeking legal assistance call or submit an online application, are screened for eligibility, and are either referred to one of our partner agencies, being New Hampshire Legal Assistance or the pro bono program of the New Hampshire Bar Association, or they're scheduled with one of our attorneys or advocates for advice and counsel. So we've been sort of operating in the remote world for quite a while. The services that we provide are almost exclusively provided over the telephone. We have a staff that includes 3 people who answer the phones and process the online applications to screen and determine eligibility. In 2019, we averaged about 150 calls a week, and I should have done this all consistently. Well, I guess it's about 155 online applications a week in 2019. Over the last couple of months, over the last month and a half, since the beginning of June, we are up to about 200 calls a week and about just over 250 online applications. And I know the numbers aren't very interesting, but what it amounts to is that right now we are seeing a 30% increase in telephone calls and about a 60% increase in online applications. In 2019, we had about 8,100 online applications. If we continue in this way, we will have over 13,000 over the next 12 months. So what we are already seeing at Lark is the leading edge of the hurricane that Elliot was talking about. I think what we're seeing is both an increase in legal needs for our client community, but also a significant increase in the client community itself. All of our clients are living below 200% of the federal poverty guidelines amount. And with so many people being pushed out of employment, even if they were just barely getting by, that community of people who are living in poverty is exploding, I think, in our state. So we are working really hard to find ways to provide services to an ever increasing pool of clients with legal needs, and new clients who have perhaps never really found themselves in the position of living in poverty. So the work of the campaign becomes ever more important as our community faces these incredible struggles, and I'm tremendously gratified to see so many people willing to turn out and learn more about our services and support the work that both of our programs are doing.
Thank you, Brecky. We had a question that came in about, how can we help legal aid at this point? And from your perspective, from Lark, is there something specific? I mean, do you want people to be calling you or emailing your organization? What are some things we could be doing as citizens while we're to try to manage this tsunami?
That's a great question. I think, my first request would be directed to all the lawyers in the community, that one of the greatest ways they can help beyond contributing to the campaign is volunteering their time. One of our resources in the state is the volunteer efforts of our Bar Association. And for all of these these clients who are going to be, fighting to preserve their housing, are going to be managing really challenging family law circumstances. Representation is really what we can offer them. Attorney General McDonald was talking about the fear of going to court. And I remember once somebody describing to me the overwhelming fear that any one of us would feel if we found ourselves at a hospital with a loved one in a health crisis that we knew nothing about. And that's very much what our clients face when they find themselves in court. Their home, their children, their families are in crisis, and they're plunged into a system that they know nothing about. So representation makes a huge difference. So that's what I would ask of the attorneys that are here. I think it doesn't have to be a divorce. It doesn't have to be a case that you might fear is going to be with you for a long time. Defending an eviction is a tremendous gift that you can give somebody.
Thank you, Brecky. That's a nice segue to introduce our next speaker, Marta Hergen, who is a former public defender, was a legal services attorney in Arkansas right after law school, and is now a staff attorney at the Legal Advice and Referral Center that Becky leads. As Brecky said, this position was I understand that Marta's position was created to coordinate the response to the unprecedented surge of applications for help with unemployment appeals and housing cases. Marta, welcome to our program this afternoon. What can you tell us about what you're seeing from clients?
Hi there. Thanks for having me. While I was at the Public Defender's Office in New Hampshire for about 6 years, I was always trying to angle my way into the civil legal aid community here in New Hampshire. So I'm thrilled to be here, and I've only been here about a month, working about a month with Lark and NHLA, but so far I've been incredibly impressed and inspired by the caseload that both organizations handle and the work that the attorneys are doing. So I'm very grateful to be here and to help. Elliot Berry talked a little bit about the housing crisis we're facing. So I just wanted to touch a little bit on unemployment and, perhaps briefly try to say what we're trying to do to coordinate efforts right now. But I guess it's a little bit of my privilege speaking, even though I was a public defender, but I had no idea how little unemployment paid in New Hampshire and nationally. The maximum in New Hampshire is $427 a week. Our clients would probably be getting much more than that on average, maybe $200, $300 a week. And with the $600 supplement due to expire in about 10 days, most of our clients are going to see vastly diminished benefits. So it's not really a policy chat, but hopefully Congress and the legislature will work to extend that $600 benefit, because without that benefit, we're going to see even greater numbers of evictions and other issues related to past due bills and other issues, and people can't pay their bills and have a tough time with their finances. So here in New Hampshire, we're just seeing obviously that a lot of unemployment systems were not created to handle a pandemic. That is true in New Hampshire too. A lot of clients are still facing delays in getting payments. Some have not been paid since they filed in March. And for some of us with a financial cushion, that may sound like, not a huge deal if you have to wait a few weeks, but for a lot of our clients that have no savings, are living paycheck to paycheck, a few week delay can mean the difference between having housing or not, food or not, being able to buy basic necessities. So in just my few short weeks and talking with clients and working with other lawyers, we've seen what a lifeline unemployment can be. And no one's getting rich off unemployment. At its best, unemployment can sort of offer people the ability to have basic human dignity in going through the world and being able to meet their basic human needs. And the legal aid attorneys have been doing admirable work, NHLA in particular, their benefits group, just helping clients navigate the system, navigate notices that are not easy to understand, and helping clients, by directly contacting NHES, get benefits that are allowing them to stay in their homes and get other things that they need. So the need is great. I won't bore you with the statistics. Unemployment is at crazy numbers right now. So, you know, I'm happy to be here. I guess I'm the cavalry that's come. Yeah, I'm happy to be working with Lark and NHLA. And I think that we're going to see the need increase. So I think pro bono volunteers will be a huge benefit to the program and anything else that people can do to assist. So thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Margaret, and welcome aboard to Lark, and thank you for putting some real context to what we're dealing with and specific examples to be dealing with. Erin Jazina is the Director of Domestic Violence Advocacy Project at NHLA, New Hampshire Legal Assistance. She's been with NHLA since 2008. Erin, I understand that Domestic Violence Project has already passed through the calm before the storm, as we talked about earlier, and it's seeing an increase in applications. Generally, can you tell us what your project is seeing in terms of client need now and what you expect in the coming months?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Thank you everyone for being here today and taking time during your lunch hour to hear about the services that we're able to offer. So yes, we're definitely getting to the storm. We expected that referrals would be down during the pandemic when we were pretty much on lockdown and the stay-at-home orders were in place. In May, for example, we were seeing referrals for domestic violence, representation in final domestic violence hearings. The referrals from the crisis centers we were seeing in the single digits, and that was to be expected because people weren't able to access services at the courthouse because they were essentially trapped inside their homes, in some cases with their abuser. So now that things have opened up, the stay-at-home orders have been lifted, people are able to access the courthouses, they're able to access the crisis centers a little bit more easily perhaps than they were when the orders were in place. So we're seeing those referrals from the crisis centers come in steadily, and they're increasing, and we're back up to the double digits per month for the number of referrals in just protective order cases. That's true statewide for the numbers that we're seeing from the courts. For example, in January of this year, statewide, the number of filings of domestic violence petitions and stalking petitions was around 301 to be exact. That number dipped down to 222 in April, and in June that number jumped back up to 284. So we're definitely seeing the increase of need, victims needing these protections and victims being able to access those needed protections across the board on a statewide level. So we anticipate that there's going to be a significant need, and I wish I could say that we are able to meet the need of everyone that accesses our services, but unfortunately we know that some victims are going to need to be in court alone.
Erin, in the earlier days of the health crisis, I understand you and New Hampshire Legal Assistance work to provide some sort of a procedural mechanism to help domestic violence victims access the courts despite stay-at-home orders and so forth. Can you just describe that briefly and tell us whether that will continue on to be a way for helping people who need to appeal to the courts?
Sure, absolutely. So there were community advocacy agencies, there were the courts really band together to say, all right, we know that there is a significant need for protection during this time because victims are, as I said, essentially trapped inside their homes without an ability to access the needed protections that they need to keep safe and to keep their kids safe. So the courts, the New Hampshire Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, NHLA, and private attorneys came together to say, what can we do to address this need? And what we developed, and I will say we developed it really quickly with input from advocates to say, how can we do this quickly but safely? And we developed a system where victims through the Crisis Center and the Stratford County Family Justice Center can file domestic violence and stalking petitions electronically. So this is, for the attorneys on the call, is a little bit different than your regular e-filing system. So victims will access Crisis Center services and they can submit their domestic violence petition through email directly to the court. And then the court will work with the victim and make phone calls to the victim to go through the process that way, so that they don't have to compromise their health in order to file a petition in court in person. So it was good for that reason. It's a mechanism to protect the health of both victim as well as court staff, but also for anyone who cannot physically access the court location, but they are able to maybe safely access a computer or laptop or other electronic device in their home, that they would be able to file that way. So we are excited that that's in place, that that's an option for victims and survivors. We've been working very closely with the 13 crisis centers in the state to implement this. The court's been fantastic. And while it was meant and intended to help victims through the pandemic, we hope that this will be an option that will continue beyond COVID-19.
Is there any guarantee that it will continue, or at least that's what you're expecting for the short term, right?
That is, it's still in place in the short term. It is definitely something that we are focusing our advocacy skills on to see that it is an option as we go forward beyond the pandemic.
Okay, well, thank you, Erin. That was a very interesting initiative, and let us know what we can do to help make this a permanent solution for people. Sarah Matson-Dustin has been the Executive Director of New Hampshire Legal Assistance since 2018. She joined NHLA as staff attorney and a Skadden Fellow in 2006, following a clerkship with Judge Barbadaro, and has worked with NHLA for 12 years. She has been doing a great job as the head of New Hampshire Legal Assistance. So Sarah, can you tell us what you're seeing from your organization's perspective?
Thanks, Ovid, and thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. It really buoys all of our spirits here in the legal aid community to have the chance to be with so many friends and supporters. So thank you for making the time to be with us today. I've been reflecting a little lately about how in a lot of ways we have been preparing for now since the last now, which was during the Great Recession, when we saw the confluence of a huge increase in need as poverty increased in the state at the same time as the funding picture became really, really challenging. And you've heard a lot from my colleagues about the different ways in which we're expecting need to increase. So I want to tell you a little bit about some of the ways that we're preparing to meet that need. One, I'm happy to say that in addition to Lark having brought Marta on, which has been a huge gain for the programs, NHLA is in the process of hiring 2 new paralegal advocates. In the civil legal aid world, paralegals represent clients in administrative proceedings, so unemployment insurance appeals, the administrative portion of a Section 8 voucher termination or public housing eviction, municipal welfare cases can be handled. So we're really, really thrilled to have the financial strength at this point to be able to make those 2 hires at a time when the need is going to be so acute. We're partnering really closely with the Pro Bono program. So the Pro Bono program, for example, recently hosted a CLE on how to handle unemployment insurance appeals, which are a great fit for volunteer attorneys if any of you are looking for a way to get involved. And there were dozens of private attorneys participating. So we're really pleased, as Brecky mentioned, to be able to leverage the volunteer resources that historically have been so strong here in New Hampshire. We also are looking forward to continuing to get lots of great work out of UNH law students. We've had, I would say, unprecedented interest in working with civil legal aid this summer. We have 11 interns from across the spectrum of local colleges and universities and law schools, and we'll have a couple of UNH law legal residents this fall. So we really are powering up some additional capacity during the time when we need it the most. The programs have been coordinating really closely to make sure that our system is as streamlined as possible. So Marta has a major hand in that, making sure that as unemployment insurance cases come in, we're getting the cases that are a really good fit for volunteer attorneys to handle in the private bar to them, making sure that the cases that are really the best fit for a staff attorney and a legal aid program to handle get where they need to go. So we're trying to build some new efficiencies at the same time as this need is spiking. So we are getting ready. We have more to do, and we hope to be announcing some additional extra capacity soon. We're waiting on some grant funding from the Nonprofit Relief Fund, which is some of New Hampshire's CARES Act money. So we're looking forward to being able to announce some additional capacity soon, but just want you to know that we are trying to bring on some more folks to meet this need as it's happening.
Thank you for that overview, Sarah. It's actually very encouraging to see that your numbers and your resources are expanding as we anticipate meeting the need. How about the financial support for New Hampshire Legal Assistance in your budget? How's that looking?
So right now, we are, I would say, in the kind of inverse of the need situation. We are, because we're not a fee-for-service organization, we have many long-term grants. So our financial health is very strong right now. NHLA has also been able to benefit from a PPP loan, from additional support from the Charitable Foundation. We've been just amazed to see how our community of campaign donors have stepped up during this time. So there are, I know many of you are on the call today. Thank you so much for everything you're doing. But we're definitely looking ahead to challenging times in 2021 and potentially beyond. We know that this next state budget process will be a difficult one. There is talk of reopening the second year of the current budget biennium. The Bar Foundation has really done everything that it can to hold the IOLTA funding steady, which is a major source of support for NHLA, Lark, Pro Bono, and the Disability Rights Center. But at a certain point, if interest rates don't recover, we expect that the available IOLTA funding will decline. So this is sort of the perennial challenge for legal aid programs, is when we rely on state budget support and on IOLTA support. Those are funding sources that tend to decline during a recession just at the same time as the need is spiking. So as I mentioned at the outset, we really have been preparing for this moment since the last moment, and NHLA has built up a reserve, has continued to cultivate really broad bipartisan support for our state funding, but I don't really have much question that there are tough funding times around the corner. So we're just doing everything we can now to shore up against those risks.
Thank you, Sarah. That was very helpful. We're going to now move into a question and answer session or section of our presentation today. And I understand that Beth Radigan, I hope she's on the line, has our first question. Beth's been involved, by the way, in the planning for this one before COVID and right from the beginning. So Beth, she's from Downs, Raglan, and Martin. We really appreciate your participating today. Are you on the line, and could you ask your question?
I am. Sorry, I was just looking for my to be on camera. So thank you. Yeah. So one of my questions is really basic. How can we help? You know, the thing is that in the Upper Valley, my office of Downs, Raglan, Martin is in Lebanon. I've been involved in a number of nonprofit ventures in the Upper Valley to sort of see what we can do to meet the need, and this being one of them. But it seems that maybe there are other things we should be doing beyond just volunteering our time as lawyers, and maybe it's financial support. But how else can we help to meet the need in the Upper Valley?
Is there anyone who would like to field that question? Brecky, Sarah? You gotta unmute yourself.
So I'll take that one. Thanks so much for the question. Your financial support is absolutely essential to us. The longstanding support of New Hampshire's law firms has really been a driver of the campaign's success. We're so thrilled to see how much the campaign support in the business community has grown. I think there's really a growing recognition among business leaders that when we have enough civil legal aid resources to make sure that people can stay in their homes, can make sure their kids are getting the educational services that they need, that they have health care available, that these are the things that allow for employees to have longevity. And so I think the business community has come to see that investing in civil legal aid is really an investment in community development and in the economic future of our state. I think we've talked a lot about volunteer resources. We thank everyone who's continuing to volunteer. We also really, we welcome hearing from law firms that have the ability to provide meeting space. Right now is not the best example because no one's doing a lot of in-person meetings, but NHLA has 5 offices, which gives us good statewide coverage, but we certainly have lots and lots of gaps. And one thing that we've really learned during this pandemic is that we can do a lot more work when we're not spending as much time in the car. And so going forward, I think that we will definitely be making use of tools like Zoom and other video conferencing platforms to reach clients around the state more quickly and more cheaply. But if we need that in-person meeting and we can do it at a law firm office rather than that's halfway in between our office and the client's office, rather than having one person need to spend 1 or 2 or 3 hours in the car, that's really a way you can help. We welcome the opportunities for our newer attorneys to develop relationships with attorneys in the private bar that can provide mentorship. We sometimes can get a little bit isolated in our civil legal aid world, and often we see some of the same folks on the other side of our cases, and we love many of them, like our dear friend Brian Shaughnessy, who's perhaps our favorite opposing counsel, but we don't always get to meet that many folks in the private bar. So if you have the opportunity to meet some of our younger lawyers and bring them to local bar events, if you have Inns of Court, like those are opportunities that we really appreciate having extended by the private bar. So those are just a few ideas off the top of my head.
That's great. Just have one brief follow-up to that. And I think one of the questions we had as we discussed about this event is whether there was a need or a way for us to support expanded office hours in the Upper Valley, for instance, include the Lebanon and Hanover area. Right now, there's just an office in Claremont, and we know that there is need also in the Lebanon, greater Lebanon area. So, but maybe what you just said about the perhaps using some office space and or Zoom meetings, that this whole grand experiment in remoteness has opened perhaps people's eyes to other opportunities to get needed services to people without having to spend money on real estate.
Good observation, Beth. Thank you for the question, and thank you again for your support of this particular program and the efforts of Campaign for Legal Services altogether. Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question? And if you'd like to do so, just simply unmute yourself before you start speaking, and we will field the question. So I'll open it up for someone else.
Hi, Ovid, it's Charlene Lovett.
Welcome, Mayor. Good to have you on board with us.
Thank you. So I sent a question in the chat room about, I'm just thinking about how do these organizations, NHLA, Lark, convey the important role that they play in the community to the local governing bodies? Because this has been very good in educating me on certain aspects. I know Elliot very, very well because we've talked together, worked together down at the State House. But I found this session to be very eye-opening, and I just don't know what has been done in the past to convey the importance of this organization to governing bodies.
That's a great question. I'm going to leave it to our professionals. One of them will, I'm sure, try to answer that. But I will just say before we hear from that person or other persons, that's exactly what the Campaign for Legal Services is trying to do. So you've raised for us another area of focus, which is to educate government leaders at the local level. I mean, our focus has been up until now lawyers and businesses, but you really identified another audience that we need to make sure understands the breadth of services available, how we can work together to provide that support for those in need. But is there anyone who would like to answer Mayor Lovett's question? Sarah Palermo, you want to take that?
I'm actually going to let Sarah Matson Dustin answer that one as well, since she did serve before being executive director as our director of policy. So she worked a lot with local and the state government.
Oh, Mayor Lovett, it's a great question. Thank you for asking it. And I think that I just have to be honest and say that we probably are not doing enough of that. We do interface very regularly with local governments, typically through our work related to property tax relief, through our work related to municipal welfare. And very often those are not interactions that are adversarial in nature. Often it's just a matter of problem solving with the municipality to figure out how an individual or a family that's experiencing poverty can get connected with the resources that they need to be able to continue to live in the community and have the ability to meet basic needs. But I don't think that we have done a good enough job of communicating the ways in which civil legal aid is really part of community redevelopment in terms of helping to ensure that the local housing stock is not only affordable, but is safe, doesn't have, for example, lead hazards. And we could maybe ask Elliot to talk a little bit about that. Making sure that people access unemployment insurance benefits right now means that people can continue to live in their homes and that their kids can return to school, whatever school looks like, that they can return to the school that they left in the spring. So I think that this is a question that for me now is putting something on my to-do list to say, how do we make sure that local governments not only have an understanding of how to reach us when they're working with folks in the community who potentially need our services, but see us as really as part of the statewide fabric of human and social services that allows the state to continue supporting low-income and other vulnerable communities. So it's a great point. I thank you for making it.
And I would just simply say as well that we always have place at the table, the Campaign for Legal Services Leadership Council for representatives from local governments. So Mayor, I know you don't have enough to do. If you're looking for a place to spend some time, we meet once a month for 1 hour.
You can sign me up for this. You can sign me up.
Ah, beautiful. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much for that. We will be back to you, guaranteed. Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Are there any other questions that people would like to ask at this point? We will terminate by 1 because I know this is the lunch hour and I want to be faithful to your time. So is there anyone else who would like to ask a question? I saw Matt Hood made a comment on chat. And I don't know, Matt, if you want to jump in here and reiterate anything that's been said or add another perspective from healthcare.
Thanks, Ovid. Just someone give me a nod if they can hear me. No, hopefully I'm off. Okay, there we go. Well, I was just commenting, Sarah had made a reference to securing healthcare as beneficial to employees and employers alike. And I think that's absolutely true. And I was just pointing out the inverse, which is when someone has often legal challenges that get in the way of their health and interfere with compliance with healthcare plans, et cetera. So if someone has an apartment that has an infestation and the child has asthma, to remedy that housing situation is going to improve the health of the person who's served. So I think there are multiple impacts and win-win situations by thinking about how we can couple legal needs with healthcare needs, among other needs, whether it's housing or employment or income security. So I just, Sarah knows this well. We've had lots of conversations about this, and I look forward to continuing them. I would just be remiss if, wearing my Dartmouth Hitchcock hat, I didn't point out some of those health implications.
Thank you, Matt. We really appreciate that. And in the chat room, we just received a comment from one of your colleagues, probably. It's from Lindsay LaFawn, and she says, "Thank you to Lark and all the legal professionals involved in this program. As a community health worker, I've referred many individuals to this vital resource with many positive outcomes that may have otherwise not been possible." So thank you for sharing that. As Sarah Matson said, Matson Dustin said to us, it is affirming to have you with us, and hearing that kind of feedback. It really gives us extra boost as we do our work. Representative Susan Almy has been posting to chat, wants to speak. I didn't see the hand up, but I apologize if I overlooked it. So Susan, your floor is yours.
Thank you. I don't have a lot of time for this right now, and I did bother Elliot, who may not have been reading the chat, a little bit earlier about this. There is a very complicated relationship, I think, between the going after landlords to allow the tenants to continue living there without paying rent, and the landlords going out of business. Upper Valley has way too little housing, especially way too little housing below $250,000. And we've got a wide range of landlords. I think we do all over the state too. Some of them are very well capitalized. I happen to think that they wouldn't forgive rent as quickly as the people who use their life savings to buy a 4-unit house and maintain it themselves and put people in there. But there are bad ones and good ones at all income levels. And the question is, when the courts get this, what do they do about balancing the ability of the landlord to keep renting the place and the renter who can't afford to pay the rent, when we have so many renters now who can't afford to pay the rent?
Elliot?
So the sad fact is, Representative Almy, and by the way, thank you for all the great work you've done in the past to try to help tenants. But the sad fact of the matter is that the courts don't have much they can do to make that balance. Either the tenant has fulfilled their obligations, including most fundamentally the obligation to pay rent, or they haven't. And if the judge finds that the landlord has properly instituted the eviction and the tenant hasn't paid, the eviction is going to go forward. I will say that we were very active in trying to have CARES money, a significant amount of it, dedicated to a fund that would enable tenants to catch up and landlords to pay their bills. And we now do have this housing relief fund of $35 million, which every tenant who's behind from any part of the emergency period should definitely apply for. And I think it's quite possible it'll all be spent fairly soon. So the sooner people get the word to apply to their community action agency, the better. I know that in Congress, they're also trying, this problem, is certainly not unique to New Hampshire. And in Congress, people are working very hard to try to get the same kind of relief on a national scale. So hopefully something will happen there as well.
Thank you, Elliot, and thank you, Representative Almy. Appreciate that. We're reaching, we got 3 minutes left. I'm going to turn this over to Sarah Palermo to give us a closing remarks and information, and then we'll sign off at 1. Thank you, Sarah.
Hi, everyone. I know it's been said, but it bears repeating. Thank you so much for spending your lunch hour with us today. The interest in this event was overwhelming. We were pretty much at capacity on registration, so thank you to everyone who is interested in learning more and who already knows a little bit about the programs, but maybe didn't know the scope that legal aid has in the community. I hope that this peek into several different program areas showed you the broad impact that these programs have. Unemployment, domestic violence, housing, the health of our housing stock, not just the access to a roof over your head, but making sure that it is a safe one, that it is not poisoning you or your children. It's very important work outside of the courts that our advocates do. And several people have mentioned today how you can support the programs, but I'm going to get into the real nitty-gritty specifics in these last 2 minutes. The website is www.nhla.org, and there is a big donate button there at the top. And I'm seeing a question pop up right now. Michael, I'm going to just connect with you offline if that's okay. It's a question I think about the CAPS and how they can coordinate some of the good work that they're doing. So I'll connect with you there. But if you are interested in learning more, being part of our ongoing newsletter, adding your voice to the voices of the community when public funding or major funding is available for these programs, connect with the campaign on our website, nh-cls.org. You can help us speak up at the legislature or at your local community level to make sure more people know about the value these programs provide. That's it.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, all of you, for joining us today. Please spread the word, join us, and Mayor Lovett will look forward to seeing you at our next meeting. Bye-bye.
Sounds good. Have a good day.